Hey, Flo here again. Thought this was a pretty nice scene, so I decided to stop for a stream. Thankfully there's a good signal here too. Okay, good. Chat's working. Alright. Actually kind of hot. The sun is pretty warm. Might have to strip a layer at some point. Alright, so I'm going to do a Bible reading up here. I'm going to read 2 Chronicles 28, 2 Kings 16-17, and Acts 25. This is kind of a touristy-ish area. Not a ton of people out because it's winter, but there could be some people coming through here, so I'll try to work around the voices and stuff. I'm gonna go sit over on that rock. It's crazy warm feeling, but I think it's cold, like probably close to freezing. It's just I'm wearing so much stuff because I kind of overdid it because I didn't want to be cold, but kind of the opposite at this point. But I think as I sit down here, I should not be too hot. The challenge around these areas is finding a place where I don't rip a hole in my pants, because these rocks, these are lava rocks. This entire thing that you see, all of that for miles and miles, is lava. And so someday I'd love to just like explore a lot of it. It's, you know, a little bit repetitious or kind of a lot of the same, but there's some, if you look out there, there's some kind of major peaks and cracks and stuff, and it'd be kind of fun to check out some of that. Hey, Mr. Z. How's it going? Misters over on D-Live. Don't believe I've met you yet. Does it sound familiar? Let's see, I got a drink here. Actually, I'll mark this spot too. I don't know what the deal is with all that phlegm in my throat today. It's seemingly going to be an issue for some reason. I've got to try not to spill this on all my microphones and phones. I was considering whether or not to bring my hat with the brim on it. I decided against it. At this point, I'm kind of wishing I had it. The sun is very bright. I have to sort of make this stocking cap into this beanie, whatever you call it. Put a little brim here on my face. Alright, so we're going to do another Bible reading. We're already listed these, but we're going to read 2 Chronicles 28, 2 Kings 16 and 17, and Acts 25. Trying to find a place for this phone where it doesn't get scratched. Second Chronicles chapter 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. And unlike David his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Instead, he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and even made cast images of the Baals. Moreover, Ahaz burned incense in the valley of Hinnom, and sacrificed his sons in the fire, according to the abominations of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. And he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. So the Lord his God delivered Ahaz into the hand of the king of Aram, who attacked him and took many captives to Damascus. Ahaz was also delivered into the hand of the king of Israel, who struck him with great force. For in one day Pekah son of Remaliah killed 120,000 valiant men in Judah. This happened because they had forsaken the Lord, the God of their fathers. Zichri, a mighty man of Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the son of the king, Azrikam, the governor of the palace, and Elkanah, the second to the king. Then the Israelites took 200,000 captives from their kinsmen, women, sons, and daughters. They also carried off a great deal of plunder and brought it to Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord named Oded was there, and he went out to meet the army that returned to Samaria. Look, he said to them, because of his wrath against Judah, the Lord, the God of your fathers, has delivered them into your hand. But you have slaughtered them in a rage that reaches up to heaven. And now you intend to reduce to slavery the men and women of Judah and Jerusalem. But are you not also guilty before the Lord your God? Now, therefore, listen to me, and return the captives you took from your kinsmen, for the fierce anger of the Lord is upon you. Then some of the leaders of the Ephraimites, Azariah son of Jehohanan, that's a hard word. Azariah son of Jehohanan, I'm going to call it Hanan. Azariah son of Jehohanan, Berechiah son of Meshillemoth, Jehezkiah son of Shallum, and Amasa son of Hadlai stood in opposition to those arriving from the war. You must not bring the captives here, they said, for you are proposing to bring guilt upon us from the Lord, and to add to our sins and our guilt. For our guilt is great, and fierce anger is upon Israel. So the armed men left the captives and the plunder before the leaders and all the assembly. Then the men who were designated by name arose, took charge of the captives, and provided from the plunder clothing for the naked. They clothed them, gave them sandals and food and drink, anointed their wounds, and put all the feeble on donkeys. So they brought them to Jericho, the city of palms, to their brothers. Then they returned to Samaria. At that time King Ahaz sent for help from the king of Assyria. The Edomites had again come and attacked Judah and carried away captives. The Philistines had also raided the cities of the foothills and the Negev of Judah, capturing and occupying Beth Shemesh, Aijalon, and Gederoth, as well as Soko, Timnah, and Gizmo with their villages. For the Lord humbled Judah because Ahaz king of Israel had thrown off restraint in Judah and had been most unfaithful to the Lord. Then Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came to Ahaz, but afflicted him rather than strengthening him. Although Ahaz had taken a portion from the house of the Lord, from the royal palace and from the princes, and had presented it to the king of Assyria, it did not help him. In the time of his distress, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. Since Damascus had defeated him, he sacrificed to their gods and said, "Because the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice to them that they may help me." But these gods were the downfall of Ahaz and of all Israel. Then Ahaz gathered up the articles of the house of God, cut them into pieces, shut the doors of the house of the Lord, and set up altars of his own on every street corner in Jerusalem. In every city of Judah he built high places to offer incense to other gods, and so he provoked the Lord, the God of his fathers. As for the rest of the acts of Ahaz and all his ways, from beginning to end, they are indeed written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Ahaz rested with his fathers, and was buried in the city of Jerusalem, but he was not placed in the tombs of the kings of Israel, and his son Hezekiah reigned in his place. Wow, he was one of the worst. Oh, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to be God. None of you should really even try, or to outsmart him or outthink him. Can you imagine? Like, some people respond to discipline and they correct themselves, they repent. Others just like kick their heels in, or whatever you say. They just become worse. This guy was one of those. Even though God was showing that you can't do this without me, you really need me to be your God, and without me you're hopeless, you're going to get destroyed. And in spite of that, he just like became worse and worse and worse, and did everything he could to offend and disobey, and everything possible. And the thing is, like, if you're in a position of authority like that, it's not just you. Like, you might be stubborn and not want to yield or submit or whatever, but you're affecting the entire nation at this point. Like, that's one of the reasons I don't really want to be in leadership. If God calls me to be in leadership, I would do it, of course. It doesn't seem to be the case at this time anyway. But man, can you imagine, like, your sins affect not only you, but everybody that's under your care, who looks up to you for their provision or leadership. And that's what happens. You see this a lot in these big churches where a pastor, sins and falls away, and then the whole church is affected. And in this case, the king of Judah, I think it was Judah, not Israel. Judah was so stupid that he caused the deaths of like 120,000 men, and then 200,000 were taken as captives. All of that was a result of his sin. Like, if he was just not so horrible, or better yet, obedient to God, then his whole country would have prospered. And probably none of those people would have died, and none of that terrible stuff would have happened. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. That's crazy. I kind of forgot about that story. Like, 120,000 died, and then 200,000 were taken captives. That's like over 300,000 people. And maybe it mentioned some others too. Like, that's a huge amount of people. Like, I don't imagine there's more than, a few million or something. That's probably like over 10% of the population at that point. I don't know. It's definitely a huge amount. Anyway, because I think the army was, maybe like 500,000 total, so like 20% of them were killed in that battle, and then 200,000 taken captive. That's crazy. It's cool to see that God intervenes through the prophet, because had that not been reversed, man, that the whole nation of Judah would have been decimated at that point. It would have been a completely different story, that's for sure. 2 Kings chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Ahaz son of Jotham became king of Judah. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. And unlike David his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God. Instead, he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and even sacrificed his son in the fire, according to the abominations of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. And he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. Then Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to wage war against Jerusalem. They besieged Ahaz, but could not overcome him. At that time Rezin, king of Aram, recovered Elath for Aram, drove out the men of Judah, and sent the Edomites into Elath, where they live to this day. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me from the hands of the kings of Aram and Israel, who are rising up against me. Ahaz also took the silver and gold found in the house of the Lord and in the treasuries of the king's palace, and he sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria responded to him, marched up to Damascus, and captured it. He took its people to Kir as captives and put Rezin to death. Then King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. On seeing the altar in Damascus, King Ahaz sent Uriah the priest a model of the altar and complete plans for its construction. And Uriah the priest built the altar according to all the instructions King Ahaz had sent from Damascus, and he completed it by the time King Ahaz had returned. When the king came back from Damascus and saw the altar, he approached it and presented offerings on it. Gotta reset. It's glitching out here. He offered his burnt offering and his grain offering, poured out his drink offering, and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings on the altar. He also took the bronze altar that stood before the Lord from the front of the temple, between the new altar and the house of the Lord, and he put it on the north side of the new altar. Then King Ahaz commanded Uriah the priest, Offer on the great altar the morning burnt offering, the evening grain offering, and the king's burnt offering and grain offering, as well as the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and drink offerings of all the people of the land. Sprinkle on the altar all the blood of the burnt offerings and sacrifices, but I will use the bronze altar to seek guidance. So Uriah the priest did just as King Ahaz had commanded. King Ahaz also cut off the frames of the movable stands and removed the bronze basin from each of them. He took down the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it and put it on a stone base. And on account of the king of Assyria, he removed the Sabbath canopy they had built in the temple and closed the royal entryway outside the house of the Lord. As for the rest of the acts of Ahaz, along with his accomplishments, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Ahaz rested with his fathers and was buried with them in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah reigned in his place. Not sure why this is wigging out a little bit, because there's a super strong signal here. It's weird. 2 Kings chapter 17. In the 12th year of the reign of Ahaz over Judah, Hoshea son of Elah became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria 9 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, attacked him, and Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hoshea had conspired to send envoys to King So of Egypt, and that he had not paid tribute to the king of Assyria as in previous years. Therefore the king of Assyria arrested Hoshea and put him in prison. Then the king of Assyria invaded the whole land, marched up to Samaria, and besieged it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and carried away the Israelites to Assyria, where he settled them in Hala, in Gozan by the Habor River, and in the cities of the Medes. All this happened because the people of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. They had worshipped other gods and walked in the customs of the nations that the Lord had driven out before the Israelites, as well as in the practices introduced by the kings of Israel. The Israelites secretly did things against the Lord their God that were not right. From watchtower to fortified city, they built high places in all their cities. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. They burned incense on all the high places like the nations that the Lord had driven out before them. They did wicked things, provoking the Lord to anger. They served idols, although the Lord had told them, "You shall not do this thing." Yet through all his prophets and seers, the Lord warned Israel and Judah, saying, "Turn from your wicked ways and keep my commandments and statutes, according to the entire law that I commanded your fathers and delivered to you through my servants the prophets." But they would not listen, and they stiffened their necks like their fathers, who did not believe the Lord their God. They rejected his statutes and the covenant he made with their fathers. They rejected his statutes and the covenant he had made with their fathers, as well as the decrees he had given them. They pursued worthless idols and themselves became worthless, going after the surrounding nations that the Lord had commanded them not to imitate. They abandoned all the commandments of the Lord their God and made for themselves 2 cast idols of calves and an Asherah pole. They bowed down to all the host of heaven and served Baal. They sacrificed their sons and daughters in the fire and practiced divination and soothsaying. They devoted themselves to doing evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. So the Lord was very angry with Israel, and he removed them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained. And even Judah did not keep the commandments of the Lord their God, but lived according to the customs Israel had introduced. So the Lord rejected all the descendants of Israel. He afflicted them and delivered them into the hands of plunderers until he had banished them from his presence. When the Lord had torn Israel away from the house of David, they made Jeroboam son of Nebat king, and Jeroboam led Israel away from following the Lord and caused them to commit a great sin. The Israelites persisted in all the sins that Jeroboam had committed and did not turn away from them. Finally, the Lord removed Israel from his presence, as he had declared through all his servants the prophets. So Israel was exiled from their homeland into Assyria, where they are to this day. Then the king of Assyria brought people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in the towns of Samaria to replace the Israelites. They took possession of Samaria and lived in its towns. Now, when the settlers first lived there, they did not worship the Lord, so he sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So they spoke to the king of Assyria, saying, The peoples that you have removed and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the requirements of the God of the land. Because of this, he has sent lions among them, which are indeed killing them off. Then the king of Assyria commanded, Send back one of the priests you carried off from Samaria, and have him go back to live there and teach the requirements of the God of the land. Thus one of the priests they had carried away came and lived in Bethel, and he began to teach them how they should worship the Lord. Nevertheless, the people of each nation continued to make their own gods in the cities where they had settled, and they set them up in the shrines that the people of Samaria had made on the high places. The men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, the men of Cuth made Nergal, the men of Hamath made Ashima, the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak. and the Sepharvites burned their children in the fire to Adramelech and Anemelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So the new residents worshipped the Lord, but they also appointed for themselves priests of all sorts to serve in the shrines of the high places. They worshipped the Lord, but they also served their own gods according to the customs of the nations from which they had been carried away. To this day they are still practicing their former customs. None of them worship the Lord or observe the statutes, ordinances, laws, and commandments that the Lord gave the descendants of Jacob, whom he named Israel. For the Lord had made a covenant with the Israelites and commanded them, "Do not worship other gods or bow down to them. Do not serve them or sacrifice to them. Instead, worship the Lord, who brought you out of the land of Egypt with great power and an outstretched arm. You are to bow down to him and offer sacrifices to him. And you must always be careful to observe the statutes, ordinances, laws, and commandments he wrote for you. Do not worship other gods. Do not forget the covenant I have made with you. Do not worship other gods, but worship the Lord your God, and he will deliver you from the hands of all your enemies." But they would not listen, and they persisted in their former customs. So these nations worshipped the Lord, but also served their idols, and to this day their children and grandchildren continue to do as their fathers did. Hey Charity, not sure if you're still there, but just saw that message. And also on Pixel, I only see the first message. It's buggy on the chat. It doesn't show subsequent messages, unfortunately. I'm streaming on 15 platforms or something, so I'm on other platforms, but unfortunately the Pixel chat doesn't work as it's supposed to. So I will not see anything else that's written, unfortunately. Alright, so one more chapter to go. Acts chapter 25. 3 days after his arrival in the province, Festus went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and Jewish leaders presented their case against Paul. They urged Festus to grant them a concession against Paul by summoning him to Jerusalem, because they were preparing an ambush to kill him along the way. But Festus replied, "Paul is being held in Caesarea, and I myself am going there soon. So if this man has done anything wrong, let some of your leaders come down with me and accuse him there." After spending no more than 8 or 10 days with them, Festus went down to Caesarea. The next day he sat on the judgment seat and ordered that Paul be brought in. When Paul arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many serious charges that they could not prove. Then Paul made his defense. "I have committed no offense against the law of the Jews or against the temple or against Caesar." But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem to stand trial before me on these charges?" Paul replied, "I am standing before the judgment seat of Caesar, where I ought to be tried. I have done nothing wrong to the Jews, as you yourself know very well. If, however, I am guilty of anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die. But if there is no truth to their accusations against me, no one has the right to hand me over to them. I appeal to Caesar." Then Festus conferred with his council and replied, "You have appealed to Caesar. To Caesar you will go." After several days had passed, King Agrippa and Bernice came down to Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were staying several days, Festus laid out Paul's case before the king. "There is a certain man whom Felix left in prison. While I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and elders of the Jews presented their case and requested a judgment against him. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand a man over before he has had an opportunity to face his accusers and defend himself against their charges. So when they came here with me, I did not delay. The next day I sat on the judgment seat and ordered that the man be brought in. But when his accusers rose to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. They only had some contentions with him regarding their own religion and a certain Jesus who had died, but Paul affirmed to be alive. Since I was at a loss as to how to investigate these matters, I asked if he was willing to go to Jerusalem and be tried there on these charges. But when Paul appealed to be held over the decision of the emperor, I ordered that he be held until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear this man myself." "Tomorrow you will hear him," Festus declared. The next day Agrippa and Bernice came with a great pomp and entered the auditorium, along with the commanders and leading men of the city. And Festus ordered that Paul be brought in. Then Festus said, "King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him, both here and in Jerusalem, crying out that he ought not to live any longer. But I found he had done nothing worthy of death, and since he has now appealed to the emperor, I decided to send him. I have nothing definite to write to our sovereign one about him. Therefore I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after this inquiry I may have something to write. For it seems unreasonable to me to send on a prisoner without specifying the charges against him." Kind of cool that most of the Roman people, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the people in authority in Rome are relatively reasonable, kind of similar to what we would expect to see in our judicial systems today. Obviously there's corruption everywhere and blah blah blah, but it's not like they just say, "Oh yeah, just kill this guy, who cares?" They actually follow procedures and do things according to a legal system and seemingly treat him somewhat fairly, although there was obviously corruption there where Festus wanted to send Paul to Jerusalem, and if you read between the lines, the reason for that is he knew that there was an ambush of people wanting to kill him, and he knew that Paul would be killed on the way, and he would be doing the Jews a favor. That's why it says he wanted to do the Jews a favor. But thankfully Paul was clever enough to detect that plot, and I guess he sort of had to appeal to Caesar. Sometimes when I read that, I think it wasn't very smart, Paul. Now you have to go to Rome, where it's kind of the end of you or whatever, but you really didn't have much choice. Plus, obviously, God has control of all these circumstances, and he wanted Paul to be a witness to all these powerful leaders and stuff. And we're also promised that we will also do this. It may be somewhat like a certain period of history that will be fulfilled, because not every Christian has been arrested and brought before authorities and stuff like that. But it does talk about that we will be brought before authorities for the sake of Jesus' name, and we have to be willing to do that if that's what God allows in our lives. Of course, it's not something that anybody should really hope for, but it may happen to some of us, and I think in other countries it definitely is more common. Maybe not so much here in the U.S. yet, though that may be coming soon. Anyway, that's it for this reading. I'm probably going to head out somewhere else. I really enjoyed this hike, though. I don't remember for sure, but I don't recall being here like this in the snow before. I maybe have, but I don't remember. It definitely looks really cool with a layer of snow on top of all these rocks and lava rocks. It's quite a visual treat, and the camera won't even pick up all the details. Like when I was walking through this lava stuff and seeing all the, each individual rock covered with snow, it just looks pretty epic. I can do a little spin of the camera around that just to show. Before I end the stream. Sorry about all the noise. There's actually a highway not too far, kind of reverberating through the landscape. So you can probably hear the cars off in the distance, and there's somebody shooting their gun out somewhere. I'm not sure where. Yeah, here's some of the cool texture of the snow on top of all the individual lava rocks. It'd be kind of fun to climb some of this stuff, but it's not really the right time for it, I guess. A lot safer when it's in the summer or something. I could definitely do more readings here if I wanted to, but I think I'll probably head out. That would be a pretty significant hike to get over to that other mountain over there, but that would look pretty cool to sit like way over there. But I probably won't. There's another place around here that I might try to see if I can do another recording if the signal's good enough. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm going to head out this time, and we'll catch you later.